Yo, what's going on, YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and we have to take a look at the Nashville Predators. Huge news, potentially shocking news, coming out of Nashville as early as last week. It looked like David Poile was confident in keeping Forsberg past the deadline and inevitably signing him in the offseason, but all of a sudden, the tide has completely turned in favor of trading their superstar forward, Filip Forsberg. So we're going to look at that today. So this was the first report from probably about a week or two ago. And I remember I just made a video. It's already outdated, but I made a video talking about the Forsberg contract situation. And this was actually part of that. This is from Kevin Allen. Again, last week, the Predators are optimistic that they will sign Filip Forsberg to an extension. And then everything took a major turn earlier this week. And this is from Andy Strickland on Twitter. Hearing the Preds are actively shopping superstar Filip Forsberg. So a complete 180 from confident, David Poile being confident, keeping him past the deadline, optimistic that he would re-sign, to actively shopping their superstar forward Forsberg. Now, obviously something has happened in terms of contract negotiations, and I wonder if it is in terms of maybe Forsberg and his agent maybe wanting to at least test the free agency market this summer. And the thing is, once the Predators didn't re-sign him in the beginning of the season when they signed Mattias Ekholm, I did have my concerns about this being a marriage that would last much longer. And that's unfortunately where we're at now. And then a lot of stuff started coming out. Per Andy Strickland, the Predators are actively shopping Forsberg. The pending unrestricted free agent here this summer in 2022 has 26 goals and 44 points in 38 games this season. Forsberg's been a really good player for the Predators. And I think that the Predators, David Poile, the GM, is kind of going with the idea that we can't afford to lose this guy for nothing, and undoubtedly would be the biggest name going into the free agency market here, up in the conversation with guys like Claude Giroux of the Flyers. And honestly, he'd be higher up on the chart than Claude Giroux because, well, he's younger, he's got the points, right? So Filip Forsberg could be a cornerstone piece to a franchise. And we haven't really heard much. I'm sure we're going to do an update to this here over the next couple of weeks. He's automatically now at the top of the trade board bait list, which I'm going to have to make a video about that here. But he's obviously at the top of that list right now because he is the cream of the crop. I think he's 28, 29 years old. He's still in his prime. And the Predators are probably going to trade him out. I don't think the Predators want to sacrifice losing this guy, like I said, for nothing if he's going to go the free agency route. And I think, unfortunately, the Predators aren't the Tampa Bay Lightning. They're not even, quite honestly, they're not really one of those top-tier teams that can just afford to lose a Filip Forsberg. They don't have the depth in their organization to do that. So it's one of those things where maybe being a smaller market here, they're going to kind of have to do what the Ducks are doing. A team that's right on the fringe of being a playoff team, but they're going to have to sell at the deadline because they can't afford to lose a Hampus Lindholm for nothing this summer. The Predators can't afford to lose a guy like Filip Forsberg for nothing this summer. It's one of those situations, and unfortunately, this has completely changed the game going into the deadline. Because absolutely, like I said, Forsberg is a marquee big name. So the question is, what kind of teams would go after Filip Forsberg? Now, there's a couple factors you have to look at. The first one is, if the idea is that Filip Forsberg just wants out of Nashville compared to wanting to test the free agency market, that's going to be a big indicator. Because if he's going to want to test the free agency market this summer, you're looking at teams like maybe the Islanders and teams that aren't a playoff team but looking to add a guy that could add that punch going into next season. You could see that work, right? If the Islanders would pick up a Forsberg at the deadline in a sign and trade. But if you're looking at just pure rental, there are going to be plenty of suitors still for Forsberg, and then we're going to get to the price. But in terms of teams that would be interested, I think there will be a ton of teams interested in a guy like Forsberg. I look at a team right there in the Central Division. I look at the Minnesota Wild. I think the Wild would love to add a guy like that. I think they'd be in that mix. You look at another team that I think is kind of interesting. I think the Dallas Stars, depending on what they do with Joe Pavelski, with John Klingberg, sounds more certain. They will trade John Klingberg either way. But what they do with Joe Pavelski and some of their other pending UFAs like Radulov, I could see the Dallas Stars maybe buying at the deadline and maybe picking up a guy like Filip Forsberg going all the way through. Another team I could see in the mix as well. Calgary's kind of out of the mix now that they've picked up Toffoli, but I would still keep an eye on them. The Colorado Avalanche, we know Joe Sakic is going all in this year, and maybe if he doesn't pick up a guy like Claude Giroux, does he maybe look at picking up his buddy Peter Forsberg, his kid Filip Forsberg, and bringing him to Colorado, seeing the next incarnation of Forsberg in an Avs jersey? Could we potentially see that? That would be very interesting. The St. Louis Blues, I think they're more interested on the defensive side of things, but consider the Blues there as just a team to look at. The New York Rangers and the Pittsburgh Penguins, I think, will definitely be looking at Forsberg. We know the Rangers had looked at Forsberg last offseason as a potential guy to acquire. I could definitely see them in the mix there. And that's pretty much it. I think a lot of teams like Florida, Carolina, Tampa, Toronto, even St. Louis to an extent, they're looking at adding defensemen. I think there's a very defensive-heavy market, and I think a lot of teams are going that route. But even I wouldn't count out a team like Edmonton. I mean, Ken Holland here, he has to make the playoffs for the Oilers. Does Nashville's David Poile sniff the desperation from miles away down in Nashville to Edmonton and say, listen, you give us this package, maybe Dylan Holloway, a first-round pick, and add whatever you want for Forsberg? Would the Oilers make that move? I think this will be definitely an interesting development here to see what teams are interested. But again, in terms of a pure rental, you're looking at those sorts of teams. Now, if we're looking at maybe a sign and trade, I think a lot of those teams would still be interested. But if you're looking at a sign and trade in terms of maybe looking into next year, I think you're looking at a lot of teams there on the East Coast again. You're looking at teams like the Islanders, the New Jersey Devils. I mean, I'm even throwing this out as a little bit of a wild card, but even the Philadelphia Flyers. I think the Flyers are going to look to clean house. Maybe add Filip Forsberg. I think that would be a great addition there. More on the West Coast, could you look at a team like LA or Anaheim? Maybe looking to add a big name punch winger like that, like Forsberg. Again, you're looking at more of a long term with that, but never say never to something like that. I think there's definitely going to be a lot of conversation, and I want to hear the price tag. I want to hear the price tag for Forsberg because I think the Predators realize how critical he is to this roster. He's first line minutes, top power play guy. Like, losing Forsberg would be a huge thing for the Predators. So they're going to ask for a pretty penny in return. Like, even for Edmonton, even trading Dylan Holloway, I don't know if that gets it done. Like, you're looking at a real good piece, probably a forward to replace Forsberg, going the other way. Now, I think they could look at a lot of different options. Like I said, I mean, you look at Minnesota, I think they would be interesting. Maybe you bring back Kevin Fiala. I know some of you Preds fans like Fiala. Maybe we see a Kevin Fiala return in a trade. Minnesota does have a lot of other assets. Like, I don't think they want to trade Rossi or Boldy, but they have those guys. Kalen Addison, if they want to fix their defense on the fly, maybe a Matt Dumba or a Jonas Brodin. I mean, there's a lot of different things depending on what the Predators want to do. Do they want to get younger and more draft picks, or do they want to try and get this team better as soon as next season? That's going to be part of the details as well. But we'll probably start to figure that out here because the trade deadline is now 3 weeks away, believe it or not. And the rumors just got a lot spicier with the Filip Forsberg situation in Nashville. So guys, that is it for today's video. Comment down below. Leave some mock trades here for the Filip Forsberg saga as we expect this to continue here for the next couple weeks. And who knows, March 21st, we may see Filip Forsberg in a new sweater. Guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and let's go Preds.